This was Prelude from Hyde Park Blvd by composer pianist Daniel Pesca, performed by Daniel Pesca from the album Promontory. Welcome to Camp Podcast. I am pianist Migo and I serve as president of the Contemporary Art Music Project, or CAMP. CAMP is an organization that promotes innovative art music and collaborates with composers and performing artists. One of many activities we do is our podcast series. All episodes are available for free on our YouTube page and Apple Podcasts. You can learn about a wide range of topics from marginalized musicians in Western music history to current collaborations between living composers, performers, ensembles, and other arts organizations. Subscribe to Camp Podcasts. Tonight, I am your host, and I am thrilled to talk with pianist composer Daniel Pesca. Once, Robert Helps was described as pianist, composer, and composer's pianist. Daniel is probably our time's pianist, composer, and composer's pianist. Recently appointed as a composition faculty member at the Eastman School of Music, Daniel is an educator, a prolific composer, champion of new music, and founder and director of new music ensembles. Hi, Daniel. Welcome and thank you for being here with me tonight.
Thank you so much. I'm just so thrilled to be on this podcast with you.
Thank you. I tried to summon all your activities in the opening, and it was not easy at all. How do you manage to wear so many hats?
Well, I will not pretend that it's easy. My life is very busy, and I feel more often than not that I am losing track of one thing or another. I mean, there's the old um, tale that Rachmaninoff used to tell about, if you try to chase two rabbits at once, you're likely to catch neither of them. Whereas if you focus your energies on one rabbit, your odds are a lot better. And he was speaking of his own life as a composer and pianist, and I know how he feels. So it is, it is a constant balancing act, and it has, gone through different phases in my life. There are times when I'm really focused on composition and times when I'm really, really focused on practicing and performing as a pianist. So there are kind of those phases that I pass through. And I would say, on a global scale, like having those different periods where you're focused on one or the other really does help. But then you always have a guilty conscience about the one you're neglecting. But I even though I say all of these things, I wouldn't want it any other way. I wouldn't want my career to be any different than it is, because these things really do inform one another for me, and I get inspiration from my music from my life as a performer, and I get inspiration as an interpreter of other people's music through my own activities as a composer. So I really find that it's all of the same piece. It's all my practice as a musician, and so I keep it going.
Cool. I read a little bit about your short interview with Eastman when you got appointed as a professor there, and you said composing really helps me become a better performer, and also performing helps me become a better composer. And I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, that's something I am kind of faced with every day. Um, as a performer, I've premiered many, many, many works, and have worked with many composers, one on one or in ensemble contexts. And it's always informative and instructive for me as a composer to be in that role as a pianist working with other composers, if that all those connections make sense. Because I learn how other composers think through playing their music and through working with them as a interpreter. But not only that, but by for me, the historic kind of standard literature of classical music is very important and a major source of inspiration in my music. And so staying in touch with that repertoire, practicing it, and even at times teaching it is something that has really opened my eyes to a lot of facets of that music that then go on to influence the music that I write.
Yeah, well, you mentioned about the working with ensemble a little bit, and I um, got to know that your one of your passion is collaboration and working with ensembles. It's been a very important part of your career, and you're a founding member of the Grossman Ensemble and director of. I assume that it's the latest collaboration, John Collective. I actually heard a recent recording of the John Liberatoris album. It was
Mm-hmm.
fantastic, really fantastic playing. Um, Also, your work with duo partner flautist Sarah Frisof. So, if you can talk about all these collaborative activities, that would be really great.
Yeah, thank you. Collaboration has really fueled both sides of my identity, I would say. Even though I love the solo piano literature and have played quite a bit of it and work as a soloist still, um, collaborating with other musicians has always been a big part of my career and a big passion of mine. And learning how other musicians think who play different instruments. As piano has certain physical properties that give us limitations. You hit a key, and it immediately begins to decay. Pianists don't need to breathe to activate our instrument, and so working with instrumentalists who are able to sustain and sing through their tones, and who require breath and use breath expressively, singers who have the influence of literature and words and diction. All of these things are immense inspirations to me as a pianist to expand my aural imagination and draw the most range of color and expression out of this instrument with its capabilities and limitations. And then I really feel as a composer, there's no better way to get to know an instrument than to collaborate with it, to learn how long a breath takes when a flutist takes a breath, or a bassoonist takes a breath, or a singer takes a breath, to learn their different strengths and their different registers, and learning as a pianist how to balance against that then informs the way I write for these instruments as a composer. So collaboration and working with other instrumentalists is very, very important for me. And I've been lucky to find these groups, such as the ones you mentioned, Grossman Ensemble, Zahn Collective, and Sarah Frisof, who are very wonderfully open and wonderfully flexible musicians in their approach to their instrument and their approach to musical expression. So these collaborations have really been a cornerstone of my musical life for many years now.
Yeah, great. I would like to know about how you became the founding member of the Grossman Ensemble, and um, now it's really quite establishment in the Chicago area, and it's just really wonderful. So, yeah, a little history about the.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I would love to share that. So from 2016 to 2019, I was artist in residence at the University of Chicago. And my duties in that role included playing works by the PhD composers. They have a wonderful program there headed by Augusta Reed Thomas. During the years I was there, it was also Sam Pluta and Anthony Chun, who are also both extraordinary composers. And so it was a very rich environment creatively, a lot of great things happening in composition. And Augusta Reed Thomas is the founder herself of the Grossman Ensemble, through the kind, generous gift of Dr. Sandy Grossman, who for whom the ensemble is named and who's the major supporter. She was empowered to found this ensemble as the ensemble in residence at the Chicago Center for Contemporary Composition at the University of Chicago. And so I was on the performance faculty at that time, and she reached out to me to be the founding pianist of the ensemble, and other Chicago area musicians at that time joined the ensemble, including Spectral Quartet, a wonderful string quartet that was also in residence at University of Chicago. So we became the initial group. There are 13 musicians in the ensemble in all. And I think, gosh, that was now 2018, 2019, that was our first season. And the concept of the group has always been that every program would be all world premieres, 4 world premieres per program. So at this point, I think the number of world premieres we've given as an ensemble is somewhere in the 60s. It's really already quite a extraordinary amount of music, each work by a different composer from all over the country. And now we even have some international composers working with us. So it's been a really wonderful experience.
Yeah, it's great. And how many works did you compose for the ensemble?
I've composed one piece for the ensemble,
Mm.
which was premiered, let's see, that was in March 2022. Um, and that was called New Examples of Confusion, and it was led by Tim Weiss. We have a different conductor for each program in the Grossman Ensemble. The conductors are all guests. I was very fortunate to work with Tim, who I also work with in the context of the Zahn Collective, and over the years he's led several of my pieces, and so he knows me and my work very, very well. So I was very happy that he was the conductor who led the premiere of my piece.
Yeah, the new examples of confusion. So was composed for 13 players, and later you had this another version including more performers, more
That,
players.
that's right. Yeah, that version was premiered this past December at Oberlin. Tim Weiss, who led the premiere in Chicago, um, is also on faculty at Oberlin and asked to perform the piece there. And I took that opportunity to make a slightly expanded version.
Yeah, it's a really beautiful and almost magical piece, I thought. And I love what you said about the work. The work is a celebration of friendship and collaborative art making.
Yes, that's right. As I was crafting the work, I was thinking of all of the individuals in the ensemble and how I wanted to feature their instrument or give them, a solo moment that I felt somehow matched their personality or matched their musical tendencies as I've gotten to know them over the years of working together. So in a way, it's almost kind of, you could call it a chamber concerto.
Mhm.
Um, so the very opening section is an oboe solo, and the oboist in the Grossman Ensemble, Andy Nogel, is a longtime friend and collaborator. He and I have been playing together since probably 2009 or 2010, something like that. So starting the piece with him was meaningful to me. Also, my secondary instrument in high school was oboe. So I
Mm,
often think of the oboe as kind of having an autobiographical aspect, like I'm starting the piece with my own voice.
cool. Yeah. I felt everybody had a moment to shine, which was absolutely great. Maybe we can listen to the entire piece. So here is new examples of confusion by composer Daniel Pesca, performed by the Grossman Ensemble, conducted by Tim Weiss. Okay, it was New Examples of Confusion by composer Daniel Pesca, performed by the Grossman Ensemble, conducted by Tim Weiss. Um, Continuing this collaboration, your collaboration work, collaborative work, you have this longtime collaborative partner, flautist Sarah Frisof. So if you can also talk about the relationship and working with Sarah, that would be great.
Yes, well, Sarah and I have known each other quite a long time. We went to undergrad together at Eastman, but we didn't really particularly know each other well. But we both went to grad school at Michigan. I did my master's there. Sarah did her doctorate there during some of the same years. And, it's one of those things where you know the face from a different space, and then you're in a new space and you're like, oh my gosh, it's you. We never talked before, but I'm so excited to see someone I recognize. And so that was probably, I think that was about 2006 when we started playing together and working together, and gave our very first concert together at Michigan, performing very difficult virtuosic contemporary music. But since then, we've gone in all different directions, playing more traditional repertoire often, as well as continuing to play new music. Sarah and I both have moved all over the place. Her first job after college was in Texas, and then Kansas, and finally Maryland. And I was moving between Chicago and Rochester, in Baltimore, and so forth. So we had to keep our partnership alive despite living in different places for many, many years. But we always did. We always prioritized it and made sure to come together a couple times a year to play concerts. And we released two CDs over that time. The first was a CD that's kind of a retrospective of the music of Joseph Schwantner. And then the second CD just was released a couple years ago, is all flute music by women composers. Um, from, let's see, the oldest piece on that album is Clara Schumann, and then all the way to the works of living composers like Tanya Leon and Amy Williams. Um, so those are some of the projects we've undertaken, and for a couple years, actually, when I was living in Baltimore, Sarah was also living in state, so we had a couple years where we really got to spend a lot of time together and do a lot of work together. But now we're back to being a long distance duo, as it were.
Yeah, I also have long distance relationship, musical relationship with actually quite many people. So I understand the difficulty.
That's
It's
right. You're
fun.
always carving out time and looking at
Yeah,
calendars, and yeah.
that's fun. So you wrote a piece for your duo. Um, have you done it a lot, or are you start doing it?
Yeah, it's funny. We premiered it. This piece was also, no, it was 2021, I think. This
Mm.
piece. We premiered it in April 2021, and then we haven't played it again yet, but we have a couple performances planned of it coming up this season. The next one at Vanderbilt in November. Um, my husband actually is also a flutist, Andre Washington, and he has started playing this piece, which is great. We recently made a recording together and of it, and then he's going to perform it at the Rochester Flute Association next month, and he has a couple more performances of it scheduled after that. So it's a quite special piece to me because in writing the piece, I know Sarah's playing so well, and I really had her sound in my ear, um, which is a very singing sound and a very flexible sound. Just a sort of continuous spinning forth of line, and also the way the flute sound can match the resonance of the piano. The beauty of doubling between those two timbres and those two instruments is something I really love and wanted to explore in this piece, which also I think is the highlights the joys and challenges of collaborative work, is playing music that has this very tight weave and this very close match of color.
Mhm.
It's for me one of the most rewarding types of playing as a collaborator, but also one of the most challenging. And so the piece is full of that. From the very opening line, the flutist starts the line, but then the piano takes it over, and that match has to just be, as smooth as water. So there are all kinds of things like that throughout the piece.
Yeah, it's gestures of grace for flute and piano duet, and I also thought it's rhythmically very tight. Um, and you, in the program note, you talked about a dance, um, and it felt really the dance between two instruments.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, it was kind of inspired by this time when I was watching a lot of videos of dance. I think it was still during COVID. So, we got on these different kicks of watching, videos of nature, or, and then for a little while videos of dance. And just thinking about the different motions and each of the pieces in five movements that really, I mean, it's even misleading to call them movements. They're really just kind of different sections of the same whole, but they all kind of refer to different kinds of dance moves. And the opening is the idea of twirling, twirling and turning motions that you see so often in dance, and having to execute those in very close coordination between the two players.
Yeah, well, let's listen to it. Gestures of Grace for flute and piano by composer Daniel Pesca, performed here by flutist Sarah Frisof and Daniel Pesca. We're listening to first 5 minutes here today. It was Gestures of Grace for flute and piano by composer Daniel Pesca, performed here by Sarah Frisof and Daniel Pesca. Oh, you taught ensemble, and I always felt ensemble teaching is different from solo piano teaching. It's not easy to nurture an ensemble. You have to have quite good players to start with. And how was your ensemble teaching that was at UMBC and Chicago?
Yeah, so that's, I mean, maybe, yeah, kind of unusually for somebody who now wears the hat of a professor of composition. Ensemble coaching and chamber coaching has been played a very big role in my career, and I've loved it for all the reasons I've talked about earlier. The in getting to know really intimately the repertoire and also the instruments that you encounter in those settings. Yeah, at U Chicago, I led the chamber music program for 3 years. That was part of my position there as well. And yeah, I mean, the thing that strikes me immediately is, the immense difficulty of simply getting groups set up and finding players who are on the same level and also personalities that are going to work together compatibly. Each chamber group kind of needs a leader. You kind of have to look for somebody who's going to, you know, be proactive about
Mhm.
setting up rehearsals and communicating and those kinds of things. But you also don't want a group where somebody, becomes a tyrant and is kind
Right.
of, overbearing and, making all the decisions on behalf of everybody else. So the kind of social dimension, as well as the musical and technical dimension of chamber music, is something I've enjoyed very much as a player, and is, I think, a very big difficulty in teaching it and coaching it. At UMBC, where I was prior to Eastman, one of my duties was to lead the new music ensemble. And UMBC has a um, fairly smaller department of music. It's not quite so many performance majors as you would find at a place like Eastman. And the new music ensemble consists basically of whoever chooses to register. So you might end up with very unusual combinations of instruments, such as, a couple guitars, a piano, and an oboe, or I don't know, something, a very odd assortment of things. And then you think, well, now what can we do? And the answer was often to, look into music for open score that's open in its scoring and flexible in its instrumentation. So I got to know some more repertoire that kind of falls under that category. And another thing we would do a lot is have the student composers write little sketches or pieces for the instruments in the ensemble, so that there's some creative engagement and also some workshopping that can happen in rehearsals. I think that's really valuable, and I love helping create those connections between performers and composers, and helping um, young performers and composers figure out how to communicate respectfully, how to listen to each other, how to um, just exist in the same space when they're often speaking different languages, one speaking from the creative side and one speaking from the execution side.
Yeah, those are, I felt also very valuable experiences to students and huge learning experience. So,
Oh my gosh, yes,
yeah,
constantly, and you feel like every you think you have experience, but then suddenly a entirely new situation arises. I mean, that's the joy of teaching, right? Is you really never know what you're going to get.
that's true. Yeah, that's true. And you always learn. You're
Hmm.
teaching and learn same time. Yeah.
Exactly.
So, I mean, you were starting, just continue talking about this teaching. You're starting this big job at Eastman, and I'm sure you're very excited. Um, about teaching and just creating new projects and new experiences for students. And I felt teaching means something different these days, especially with all the technology available, and a lot of people talk about AI and just different sides of creativity and music. So I think we need everybody's wisdom. um, so yeah, please share your thoughts about this and where we should go and what would be the future of music.
Yeah, I think now more than ever, teaching composition requires a very nimble mind and a very open mind because things just change so rapidly. The world is changing rapidly, and the stunning rate of technological development and online resources just is so different. I mean, I'm going to sound like a very old person, but I remember when I first discovered YouTube, and this was when I was in my undergraduate. I think it must have been 2003 or 2004, and I remember typing into the search bar ligeti, and I was absolutely astonished that there were at that time, literally I think it was 18 or 20 videos of ligeti pieces. But I thought, wow, how amazing is it that I can just listen to these pieces right here from YouTube without having to go to Sibley Music Library across the street. And now, of course, you search for ligeti, and I can't even fathom how many results you would come up with. 200,000 probably. But it's that rate of change is continues to accelerate, and it amazes me how influential certain platforms are. Like you probably know the YouTube account Score Follower,
Hmm.
which posts scores of compositions, contemporary compositions, synced to their music, and these are remarkably popular and remarkably well known among my students. A lot of people seem to watch this channel religiously and really get a lot of ideas from it, which is great because it's all very very recent music. But this was something that didn't even remotely exist in my education,
Hmm.
and it poses different challenges too, because you can't. It's much more difficult to analyze a score that's scrolling by, and the idea of sitting with a score and looking at it silently, or looking at it for a prolonged period of time is not as familiar to some students nowadays, because they're
Hmm.
used to seeing things scroll fast, scroll by quickly. Um, so yeah, I mean, there are constantly, we're constantly having to adjust, and also, I think the question of style and stylistic development. I mean, it's in my observation, there are many trends that come around over and over and over again, and every few years they seem to be rediscovered as something cutting edge and new. But nonetheless, for composition teachers to constantly be adapting to new styles and new sensibilities is definitely one of our major challenges. And in choosing repertoire to share with my students and bring to analysis classes and so forth, I try to pay attention to what's happening now, and also represent a diversity of backgrounds as well as a diversity of musical voices in the repertoire I analyze. I just feel like we have to be increasingly agile and increasingly flexible. And I also feel that careers in music have always been complicated and have always been difficult, but now more than ever, I think we have to think about the information about careers and possibilities outside of school. Really, very early in a student's study, we need to help them think through some of these questions and kind of locate their place in the music world. That's the way I often think of it, is like, where's their home? Who are their people? Who are they writing for? And what kind of setting is really going to enable that student to flourish? And I think about that a lot with each of my students.
Yeah, I sometimes wonder if this identity of a musician becomes more important, even more important in this setting, or less. Um, who I am as a musician, it does it matter anymore um, with technology and the also the that ability of copying and imitating, or making something plausible.
That's a really heavy and challenging question. Yeah. I feel like music composition has not really hit up against the AI challenge yet. I know my colleagues in other disciplines, or even within music, even such as musicology and music theory, they are considering students using AI and the types of challenges that creates. And yeah, I haven't seen it yet, kind of reach us in music composition. But if there's no doubt that it's coming and it's on its way, and I think we have to be attuned to that. Yeah, as to the question of imitation, I mean, I think all composition to some degree starts off as some kind of imitation when you think of it. I mean, we are part of a tradition, and part of what we learn in our training is how to imitate. And I feel like the process of developing a unique voice is a very delicate one, and one that emerges really in most cases over a long time. It's not something you see often, that somebody just bursts forth out of nothing with a unique voice. You get to a unique voice through practice, and through doing the careful work, and figuring out. It's sort of like a series of tiny preferences. It's like, oh, I really like the way that particular voicing sounds, or I have a certain sensibility that's emerging about how I handle transitions, or proportions. I think of proportions in a certain way over and over again in my music, and that seems like it's some kind of preference, or is leading me towards some kind of style. And you just kind of accumulate those things through your writing. I think the question of voice can be, in a way, overemphasized, or we can rush students to it too soon.
Hmm.
I don't know if this really helps with the question of AI at all. It probably doesn't, but yeah.
No, I think it does. I think it does because, at least for me, that you develop a sense of you, or I develop a sense of myself by my own training, and just really know what I can do, and what I like and why I'm doing it. And that's not something that you can easily get by just I don't know, just imitating, or just writing a piece in style of um, certain period, or certain style, or a certain composer, or things like that. So yeah, I think it really comes from kind of study about yourself and your work and your music, kind of
Right,
thing. So
exactly. Kind
yeah.
of, it's a reflective process in a way, and I think that's why composers sometimes get quite, um, what's the word, um, isolated in their work, because they get
Mhm.
so enmeshed in these questions of identity. But we do have to kind of, come to terms with our own creative urge, and where that springs from, and then how that manifests in the music.
Exactly. Yeah. Um, yeah, well, you have very exciting semester. Um, I bet it's already started, and um, yeah, what are your expectation at Eastman, and any upcoming project?
Yeah, I have a few things kind of on the horizon in the near term. Let's see. I just finished in the last few days. This is the first one to come to mind because it's been weighing on my brain. I wrote a new piano piece that I was commissioned to write for an event in November, and so I decided to write something fairly virtuosic. It's for myself, so I
Mhm.
finished it 2 months ahead of time so that I have time to practice it before November. And it's a chaconne, which is of course a historical genre with a big history in the Baroque. So for me, it was an interesting opportunity to engage with historical models, but also find my unique spin on them. So I've very much enjoyed that. Coming up, I have a couple concerts in Illinois with the bassoonist Ben Reutelward. He's a wonderful bassoonist who specializes in contemporary music, but plays music of all eras. So we're giving a couple concerts together, and both of those include a new piece that I composed for Ben over the summer. So I'm also finishing making edits on that, and I'm really looking forward to that time with him. I have a couple performance projects in the fall as well. One is a recording project with my old friend Bobby Mitchell, who's a pianist who studied at Eastman in some of the same years I was a student here. And we're playing two piano music by Martin Scherzinger, um,
Mhm.
who writes very rhythmically charged and complicated and beautiful music. So I'm really excited for that. That's Bobby's coming to Rochester in October, and we're rehearsing together and then recording. And then I have my ongoing projects with the Grossman Ensemble, and we have a great set of composers this fall, and they look like really, really terrific pieces. One of those concerts in the fall Grossman Ensemble is going to be conducted by Brad Lubman, who is faculty at Eastman. So that's kind of fun that we'll be doing this project together as colleagues.
Exciting. Sounds all wonderful.
Yeah,
Wish I
thank
could
you.
be there every single event.
Yes, yes,
Yeah. Well, it's been really great talking with you. Um, and I think I wish you all the best luck and fun at your new job, and of course with all the upcoming projects. And
yes. Thank you so much. Yes,
thank you.
it's a very exciting time.
Yeah. We usually end the show by listening to music, and so we are going to make our exit listening to Daniel Pesca's Intermezzo. This is second Intermezzo from Three Intermezzos for guitar, and performed here by Dieter Hennings. Support us by donating. You can go to our website, www.contemporaryartmusicproject.org, and simply click the donate button. Help us continue our podcast, festival, and other exciting projects. Thank you for listening. I'll see you next time.